Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Adeptus Ridiculous Podcast. My name is DK Diamantes, Bricky's name is Bricky, and we have special guest Kirioth here because it is indeed that time of the month. But before we get into that, if you enjoyed today's episode and you want to support the podcast, head over to patreon.com/Adeptus Ridiculous, where you can get access to the Discord, bloopers if they happen. $15 tier gets you access to all of our posters in HD digital form. I believe you can still follow on Apple, Facebook, Google, all that stuff. And yeah, patreon.com/Adeptus Ridiculous. Bricky, hi.
Hey, if you want to check out other awesome stuff, you can read False Gods, the next episode in the Horus Heresy trilogy, quadrilogy, whatever.
The Horus Heresy.
If you would like, I would highly recommend checking out the merchandise site at Orchidate.com, but I would maybe argue to maybe wait just a little bit. We have some things cooking, and they're cooking. We're looking at about maybe mid-October to launch these things, so about maybe in 2 episodes. And so hold off for a bit, because if you're going to get something, I'd prefer it if you got it all at the exact same time. And so just keep an ear out.
The kilns are burning, stuff is cooking, there's some, something
smell on
good.
The horizon.
That we're smelling what's on the horizon, nothing else. We're not anything
that
other
was
than
so loud.
That was devastating.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
I didn't realize it'd be that abusive. I'm sorry.
That was shocking.
I didn't realize it would be like that.
It wasn't even like double the volume. It somehow like broke the barrier. I don't know what happened there.
I can tell that DK does not have a compressor on his microphone.
Supposedly there's a compressor on this thing, but hey, listen, go pick up the merch.
That actually, don't pick up the merch yet. Wait till the.
Right. Yeah, sure.
That actually jump scared me. Holy.
You're welcome, everyone. We're off to a great
goodness.
start. Let's go. How you doing, Kirioth, my boy? Our boy,
Heart rate's up a little bit, but I'm all right. I'm recovering from the.
Just wanted to make sure everybody was awake and ready, because we're a little earlier than usual. Just want to make sure everybody's good. Just up the senses.
Just like an adrenaline injection. It's just to get you going.
Yep.
Exactly.
Uma Thurman. Yep.
Yeah. Give it a shot.
Give it a shot. Nice.
It's a decent reference. Anywho, Kirioth, do tell you have returned to the land of the living. Do not worry, we will not create another episode in which, like last time, this will be a much happier episode.
Hopefully,
it was there were reactions, but it's fine. We'll just carry on. We'll just ignore all that. It's
just how opinions work.
Hey, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, it's been leaked data mined that the game is going to be getting the Beaky helmet added. And as far as I'm concerned, that has undone any and all negative sentiment. Because
10 out of 10.
They're making a Beaky helmet, and that right there is killer. So, hell yeah.
Agreed.
that by itself, game of the year, easy.
Game of the year. I've changed my mind. Balatro, nothing.
So, Kirioth, what's up? What's up? What do we owe the pleasure of today's episode?
Well, funnily enough, beatboxing.
Beatbox? Oh, we beatboxing?
You can. I'm not going to. You had a good intro into something there, but that's more. I was going to say that's more your speed, but I don't know if that's really true. Anyway, we're going to stick with the Space Marine theme, but I'm going to give you a quote. Not the game, just Space Marines in general, just to narrow it down a little bit. I'm going to give you a quote and see if you recognize it. See if it brings anything up in the back of your head.
Okay.
When all is darkness and every way out is lined with blood and lit with the fires of battle, there is still hope.
When all is darkness and every way out is lit with the fires of battle, there. Salamanders?
I was thinking salamanders too, just because it sounded very honorable and like, no matter what happens, we're still gonna fight. But Shai said that was a fail, so never mind. I'm not guessing salamanders.
No.
I didn't lock that in.
That's incorrect. Shai said that was a double fail.
Ooh.
We're not making it.
Also lined with blood. Although I'll be honest, I don't know how much that's going to help either. But
blood for the blood god. We're doing world eaters.
I mean, is it chaos or is it a loyalist?
Here's where it gets really tricky. No.
Alpha Legion.
Okay, so it's Renegade.
It is
Marines.
Renegade.
Okay. I didn't realize lined with blood was part of the concept. I assumed it was just like, yeah, we're backed into a corner, but as long as we can still fight, we can still win and live, you know? Which is very salamanders to me, but
it is.
I guess Blood Angels would be a little too on the nose, and they're not Renegade.
Yeah, they're not Renegade.
That would also make a difference, yeah.
Yeah.
Do I even, I mean, I don't think I know many Renegade chapters. The only one I remember back in the day was like here on Blackheart's shenanigans, but that's kind of different nowadays.
Yeah. Is this one of those ones that's like something that I probably would have never heard of because it's not one of the main chapters? It's just like a sub chapter of something. It's like the Blood Falconaries or something.
Would it even be a chapter if they're Renegade technically?
I mean, they're still, they were still a chapter. They might even be a chapter now.
Well,
I got nothing, brother. I got nothing.
You've stumped me, which is not a high bar, but you've stumped Bricky, which is pretty good.
Renegades are some of those ones that I don't know much of because they're so rarely discussed, but this might be the most popular Renegade faction, and if that's the case, then damn. Also, that quote can be attributed to like literally
90% of the stuff that's in Warhammer could be attributed to that quote.
It's also,
almost any loyalist could be that.
It's also when we get into it more complicated than I'm really giving it credit for, that quote. So we're going to talk about the Soul Drinkers, one of the most popular Renegade chapters.
Okay,
but the vast majority of their lore is contained in the novels that were written about them. I believe the first one was published in like 2002, so a while ago. This is older Black Library stories. This is getting on a bit, and the Soul Drinkers have gone through a really interesting kind of evolution over the course of their existence, where obviously started out Loyalist, became Renegade, and then with the appearance of Primaris, they became Loyalist for a second time, which is not generally something that tends to happen in 40k.
I was going to say, I didn't think you could do that. I figured once you sort of gave in and you went to Chaos and you went, whatever, that was kind of it. And the Emperor's Light would never find you again, and you would never be welcome back because you're a traitor.
Okay, I'm a little sad now because I do know about the Soul Drinkers. I thought they were Loyalist.
Sorry, Shad. That's true. They're Renegade, not Chaos. You're right. Sorry.
That's where it gets. It's like it gets tricky, which we'll get into. So technically, they were or are still kind of. It will make more or less sense as we go on, but they are a descendant of the Imperial Fists. They were part of the second founding, allegedly, or alternatively, depending on where you're reading in the novels, they may also have been third founding, allegedly. It's a little bit blurry as to which one it actually is. And the first thing that was really written about them in terms of date-wise, like the first things that were written were the novels that they're in, but they did, since that point, end up showing up in War of the Beast, kind of legitimizing them as an early chapter, as part of the Imperial Fist. They took part in the Last Wall Protocol. So the history of the chapter goes back a long, long way.
Okay. I kind of love their logo too.
Can we talk about how Dorn's successor sons are like? He's got to calm them. Like I don't know what Dorn specifically has been doing that's been causing this, but between the Soul Drinker, well, you know what? I don't know if the Soul Drinkers are like totally insane or anything. I'm sure I'll find out. But after the
their
Black
names
Temple,
are the Soul Drinkers. Like, I don't think they're stable.
yeah, well, I mean, you could say that with like almost every one of those damn people, Like, there's like a loyalist chapter called the Exorcists.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, demons in themselves. I'm sorry. There's the loyalist subfaction of the Blood Angels known as the Flesh Terrors.
Yeah.
Okay, that's this. Okay, all right. Yeah, but that's different. That's the Black Rage. That's the Red. Yeah, that's different. That's
Yeah,
different.
Yeah, you say that, but at the same time, I'm like seeing Dorn, and I'm seeing, yes, my loyal sons, the Soul Drinkers and the Black Templars. They are perfectly mentally stable. I can be trusted with a rifle.
I mean, Shy's fair. Like, Pain Glove will do that to you. Like, Magic Pain Glove, tell me what to do. Faction probably would have some off-kilter successors, right?
Magic Pain Glove.
Tell me what to do.
It's the best way to know how to think for yourself. Just stick your hand in, and then go from there. Best way to run everything. I think is what he's going for there. But yeah, they on the wiki it says Knights of Dawn suspected to be Imperial Fist successors.
Suspected of it, yeah.
Could be. I mean, you never know. Could be wrong.
Let's not jump to conclusions here. All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who knows? Could be anything.
So yeah, when the Imperial Fists were broken up after the Horus Heresy and divided into chapters, the Soul Drinkers, so it's reckoned, were formed out of the boarding specialists from the Imperial Fists. So super targeted force. They specialized in boarding actions. They specialized in drop pod assaults. They were all about getting in there as quickly as possible, overwhelming the enemy as fast as they could, and then getting out and just leaving a ton of destruction and dead bodies behind. Right down to the fact that their sort of motto, kind of battle cry, they've got a couple. They've got for Dawn, for the Emperor, and for freedom. And they also have cold and fast. Which
just the way I like it.
Oh, yeah? Is that true? Frostbite looking ass?
No, man. Like, you think I get any action? I'm just saying it for the lulz. Come on.
Frostbite looking ass.
Sorry, go ahead, Gary.
I feel like early recording is somehow making it more like derailed than like usual. I still can't speak, which isn't helpful. So they are, for all intents and purposes, very good getting in, killing everybody, getting out, super fast lightning assaults, and extremely loyal. Like, very, very loyal. I cannot overstate how loyal the Soul Drinkers were. Because they have a very deep love for the Emperor, even by the standards of Space Marines, and they have a deep love for Dawn. Dawn is like the guiding force. And a lot of what they kind of believe and a lot of what they kind of operated on was a book that was written by the philosopher soldier, and I'm going to struggle to pronounce this. Dionysios? Hang on.
You can spell it out. We can try and help you.
Danathos.
Danathos? The Y is really throwing me off.
Yeah, it's that Y right in the middle is kind of a pain in the butt.
Damn, Danathos coming at it again with them
white vans.
White vans.
Yeah. Danathos is my best bet, yeah.
I will ask though, as curiosity, it kind of seems interesting that the Soul Drinkers are like, they have Luna Wolves levels of fighting. They're like hardcore shock in and out, which is very opposite of what Dorn is,
Well, the reckoning is that the different aspects of the Imperial Fist were kind of splintered off into different chapters, right? So you've got the most zealous nutcases ended up under the Black Templars. The ones who were kind of more all-rounders ended up as Crimson Fists. And the ones who were super good at boarding actions, presumably not that many of them, enough to form a chapter. But you're right, it's definitely not like, you think Imperial Fist, you don't think super good at boarding actions. But at the same time, I guess every chapter's got to have some, or like every legion had to have specialists that could do that work. Even if the way that Games Workshop quite often portrays them is like, here is X chapter. Here's White Scars. They all love bikes. It's like in theory that's really cool, but would they successfully like perpetrate wars only doing fast attack and having nothing in the way of like supporting artillery or tactical squads, etc.?
Like they might be known for their bikes, but they can do everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Also, it's kind of weird that like a group called the Soul Drinkers are known for their loyalty, because that name just doesn't inspire me to be like, oh yeah, they're my friends. They'll always be my friends. It's just...
Now hold on there, DK. Think about it. Who is the #1 soul drinker out there?
Well, I mean, Biggie does
drinks 1,000
Psyker souls a day.
I mean, if you're gonna be like the Emperor, I mean, yeah, I'm just saying.
It's true.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. They are not your friends. Well, Also, not to bring it back to like the game that just came out, but there's a purple colorway in Space Marine 2 that has a chalice. Is this them?
I think you can paint yourself as the Soul Drinkers in Space Marine 2. Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, because I vaguely remember getting like one of the colorways, and I'm pretty sure it was a chalice and like the armor set was purple.
You know what? I will do some research. You guys keep going. I'll load up Space Marine 2, and I'll let you know. Continue, Imperial.
You're doing God's work, man.
We've lost Bricky to another at least 1 hour of PvP, but we'll carry on.
That's all right. I'm still here. I got you, Gary.
I love grapple.
There's just going to be just a purple guy running around grappling stuff is how the research is going to go. So they do have a good reason for being called the Soul Drinkers, in as much as any chapter or legion has got a good reason for being called anything that they're called. They have a mutation in their gene seed, which it's the omophagia organ. So it's the one where they like eat it and then they can absorb some of the memories of the creature they've eaten.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Kind of like the Kroot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Kroot get like DNA, so they evolve. Like I think Space Wolves do it a lot, right? And I guess Night Lords sometimes. Space Wolves will like eat their people and be like, I know where the enemy commander is. For us and the All Father, etc.
Yeah, it's that sort of like you eat a bit of the thing, you get a few memories, you hopefully get some sort of like actionable information from it. The Soul Drinkers have a mutation in it where they don't just get the memories, they also get the emotions of the creature that they've eaten. So instead of it just being a case of getting a flash of maybe where a command bunker was, or just a flash of a giant in purple armor about to split your head open, they also reckoned it to like being able to see into the creature's soul, which is how they ended up with the chapter name of the Soul Drinkers.
Right.
It became more like a...
Yeah. So they like feel all of the
experience almost.
Emotions that the thing they just ate felt. Ooh, that's kind of a double-edged sword, especially in the world of Warhammer 40K. Like that's not necessarily a good thing, because like you get the emotions of someone that got slowly digested by a Tyranid, and it's like, oh great, I get to feel that. Wonderful.
Well, you're not going to get that emotion.
Well, that's true, because they're
slowly digested
melted into biomass. Yeah, but you get the idea. You get the idea. You're very right, but you get the idea.
Wait, I'm sorry, Shai. That's a fantastic image. we need to Photoshop the Soul Drinker on the guy, and then who would be in the background? Like an Ultramarine, maybe like Gilliman or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's
incredible.
Oh my god,
I love that.
All right, hold on. We're in Space Marine 2. Let's see here. We've got Successor chapters. We have unknown founders, no Soul Drinkers. No. It's the Hawk Lords. No. Oh, god damn you, Astartes. Spit on that thing.
I was wondering if someone was gonna go there. I was wondering. You industry plant.
That's it kind of is an industry plant, isn't it? Just like Horizon Zero Dawn.
Hey. So Soul Drinkers.
Oh yeah, they've like it's become like a ceremony, like a ritual for the Soul Drinkers, the eating of another creature's flesh, because of the additional effect it has, which is the ceremony of the chalice. So they'll put the thing in a cup, they'll eat it out of the cup, and then have like a almost spiritual experience. When we decided to cover this, I may have set myself a slightly ambitious task, right? Shai, I can't remember how long ago we actually decided on like what we were going to talk about today, but I decided that I was going to read all of the Soul Drinkers books between then and now, forgetting that it's like the first omnibus alone is like 1,000 pages. And I did manage it, but I'll be honest, I don't know how much fully went in, and a lot has had to be backed up by looking stuff up, because it's amazing if you just like read one specific thing for long enough, I feel like it almost becomes like not mush, but everything blends together. Like the timeline of things stops making sense because you've just been in it the whole time. But very early on in the first omnibus, because there's a couple of them, there is a point where a guy called Sarpedon, who becomes the chapter master at one point, he eats the flesh of a mutant to try and gain some information. And he doesn't just like see that creature's memories. He has this awful feeling of being like covered in filth and being trapped and unable to escape, and feeling like not being able to feel the light of the Emperor on his presence.
Yeah.
And it's so bad that it like sucks him in, and he has to like fight his way out of that experience.
Sheesh.
So it
very much so a double-edged sword, where it's like, this is a nice thing to have, but be careful because that happens.
Yes. Yeah. It could be helpful. It could also be a horrific, like metaphysical experience that destroys your brain. So bit of a double-edged sword. But
Can I ask real quick, like, so when other, like, because they started off loyalist, right? When they start like eating mutant flesh, do the other chapters, are they like, ew, like that's Xenos flesh, like, ugh, you guys are disgusting, and like, do they kind of look down on the Soul Drinkers at all for stuff like that?
I don't know how often they like did it in front of other chapters. There's definitely like a kind of a thing of only doing it because you need to do it, as opposed to it being like an enjoyable experience. It's kind of
it's not like they're having buffets of food
it's
because they're doing it for
this is going to be rough, but it should be worth it. So we're going to do it anyway. That sort of approach.
I was about to say for the greater good, but wrong episode, right?
That doesn't necessarily scream like, well, we should name our chapter after it then. You know, it's like, well, damn, this is like tough, but I guess we got to do it. It is like, our names are Soul Drinkers.
Yeah, it's kind of on the nose, isn't it? It's
a little bit, yeah.
It's a bit like right at the front there. But like that's up to a point. That was the thing that kind of defined the Soul Drinkers. They have this extreme kind of lean towards boarding actions, rapid assaults. They have this mutation of that organ, and up to a point, they were just fully loyalist and doing what loyalists do. But there is a problem. There is a relic, and it's a very important relic for them. It's called the Soul Spear, and based on the kind of myth or history of the chapter's founding, it was given to them by Rogel Dawn during the second founding. It's quite like it's very like venerated within the chapter. The Soul Spear, according to the Soul Drinkers, is a weapon that Rogel Dawn utilized throughout before the heresy, when it came to spreading out across the stars and conquering worlds. Rogel Dawn conquered 1,000 worlds and hung his standard from the Soul Spear. You've probably realized at this point that there's not much mention of the Soul Spear throughout any of the Horus Heresy books whatsoever, unless I've missed that somewhere. It doesn't really tend to show up at all. So there's an interesting conflict there, where their chapter mythology says we were given this weapon. The Soul Spear, by the way, is an insane weapon. It is vastly powerful. It's supposedly something that Rogel Dawn found supposedly wielded himself, and he supposedly fixed it up. Essentially,
a lot of supposedlys, man.
yeah,
That's-
there's a lot of kind of obfuscated, like missing or confused history with the Soul Drinkers, which like we'll get into as we go into it. But this weapon, the Soul Spear, is basically, you know, when I've heard of the void grenades.
You mean like the vortex grenades?
Vortex grenades, sorry, yeah.
Where it basically makes a tiny little rift into the Imperium.
Yep. Imagine if you could just have one of those open indefinitely in the shape of a blade coming out of a spear, and that's what the Soul Spear is.
Oh,
so it's just like you stab someone with it, and then like whatever is there just gets like yanked to the warp, sort of, kinda, or gets absolutely screwed up for whatever reasons it be.
Yeah, it absolutely ruins them. It's basically like a stable kind of vortex warp thing going on, and it's got a slight twist to it where only those who are descended from Rogel Dawn can activate it. So massively important, right? A bit of Arcanotech just discovered on a world, and then like Rogel Dawn gives it.
I was going to say kind of the same thing. Well, I wasn't going to say the exact same thing, but Shai said, didn't Altharius's Pale Spear do the same effing thing? But I was like, man, this thing is sounding more and more like it's some sort of like Xenos artifact. And they're just like, oh yeah, you know, Dorn totally found it. What? No, he passed it down to us. See, only we can use it. Totally. Yep. And they just don't want to admit that it's like some heretical Xenos, like weird weapon.
So if I'm mistaken, because I was thinking the same thing Shai was thinking, which was the Pale Spear, or the Sarah Sonata. I remember that one because when I read the Altharius book, it's clearly Xenos tech. I would have to argue maybe Necron or Old One or something like that. It doesn't do a void thing. It basically just kind of like deletes whatever it is at a molecular level. So like you slice into them and it just kind of like it's like you took a big eraser on like Photoshop and just went whap, and
Dare
it's
I
gone.
make the JoJo reference?
See, I was thinking that, but I didn't want to say it.
Dare I?
I really didn't want to say it because I will refuse. But
Okay.
A little bit of that, but because of it, it like turns in this weird oily smoke, afterwards. So
That sounds really cool, though.
it's kind of the same, but to me, it's just kind of like the Pale Spear just deletes where it is, whereas this thing has like a warp portal in it and whatever. Can you imagine if you like stab someone with a Soul Spear and then they just like turn into a demon? You're like, crap.
We did it again. Shoot. It's a bit of a Gamba spear.
Funny you should mention demons. That might turn out to be important later. So,
oh no.
The Soul Spear, very important, vital to the chapter, a huge part of their history. So what happens in M40? It gets lost, because of course it does. It's Warhammer 40k, all the best tech. It gets lost in the warp or thrown out of a porthole or whatever. It was on the flagship of the Soul Drinkers, the Sanctifier, and the flagship was lost in a failed warp jump.
Oh, that's the worst. It wasn't even a battle or anything. It's just, dang, warp travel sure is fickle. Oh,
yep.
That sucks.
Yeah, just gone. And for well over 1,000 years, the Soul Spear was just lost. They didn't know where it was. They couldn't find it. There was just no way of knowing what had happened to it until some information reached them that the Soul Spear had been found. And it had been found on a star fort. And the star fort was being occupied by a couple of disgraced Imperium aristocrats who were harboring mutants.
Ooh.
And they were forging their own little empire, their own little smuggling empire. And the Soul Drinkers received this information that the Soul Spear was part of a like collection of artifacts on this star fort. So naturally, they went to the star fort, attacked it, absolutely blitzed everybody. All the mutants got annihilated, which was part of the plan. It was part of the plan of a consul who wanted to take the star fort for himself, and he'd managed to leak the information about the Soul Spear to the Soul Drinkers, so that he didn't have to get too many of his troops involved in taking the star fort. It was just a bit of like maneuvering so that all the hard work was done by Space Marines. because he'd heard that they were after this
Yeah.
relic. And once he sort of pulled up data on the inventory of it, it was like, oh, this is their spear. If we say it's here, they will 100% come and get this, which they did.
And then did
Unfortunately,
they killed all the mutants and like, here's your spear. Bye-bye.
well, that was the plan. They wanted to get in there, kill everybody, grab the spear, get out, which would be standard operating procedure for them. They weren't really fussed about the rest of the Imperial fleet around there. They wanted to take their artifact back, and the actual reasons for attacking the Starfort for them were literally just, they have our thing, we are going to get our thing back. Unfortunately, the Adeptus Mechanicus also knew of the Soul Spear.
Oh.
So the Soul Drinkers, they go in, they assault the Starfort, they kill everybody, they lose their commander to one of the aristocrats because she uses a poisoned weapon on him, like a digi-poisoner thing, which it's like an artifact weapon. It's killing him slowly. He's not even having a warrior's death, which is extremely disappointing for him. And the whole the Marines that are there are gutted that he's going out, let's be honest, like a pussy. Even though he's had a storied history as a Space Marine, he got stabbed by someone who looked like a kid because he wasn't paying attention, which is the worst way to go for any Space Marine. But the Soul Drinkers especially have this, even by the standards of Space Marines, it's you must die a warrior's death. There's a lot of duty in death, honor in death, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So they do all the hard work. They get within spitting distance of the Soul Spear, at which point a Admech lad called Archmagos Kobatov teleports in, grabs the Soul Spear, and then teleports out, leaving the Soul Drinkers on a Starfort full of corpses with no artifact.
What do you see, Captain Badrook? A bunch of suckers.
Is it me, or is it a very common thing that Admech just show up, and a lot of times in these stories or certain games, they just end up ruining stuff? Just oh hey, yoink. And it's
such an Admech thing.
Stop touching stuff that's not yours. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it.
The quest for knowledge.
I don't care. Stop touching stuff that's not yours. It doesn't belong to you. Get out of here.
I loved in Space Marine how much they just hated dealing with the Admech.
Oh,
they were constantly God the Mechanicus again.
Yeah,
wasn't
there a guy talking to Titus that was ooh, I don't know about you, and Titus is yeah, but I hate the Admech, and hey, hell yeah, brother, yeah, I suddenly like you a little bit more. I totally agree with you, bro.
Bonding over how much the Admech sucks.
Yeah,
it's a really good moment.
It's are you upset with us, brother? It's only if you worship the cog of Mars. It's I share your frustration.
Yes. Damn,
it's so
Admech.
Funny. I mean, that's kind of 95% of the time, everyone is just kind of annoyed with the Admech. They're oh my god, okay, dude.
If we didn't need your tech so badly, Admech.
Yeah, it's always funny.
Well, funnily enough, the teleporting in, grabbing the thing and leaving, it didn't go down well. Soul Drinkers were not happy about this, and this is where Sarpedon comes in. So Sarpedon was previously a librarian, but his commanding officer dies a warrior's death. He is then promoted, field promoted, to lead this force of Soul Drinkers, and he gives an ultimatum. It is basically, give us the spear back and we will forget this ever happened. If you don't give us the spear back, things aren't going to go very well for you. And so there's this whole conversation where the actual, the Imperium officials are excuse me, Archmagos, is there any chance you could give them this goddamn spear back? Because we have a bunch of very angry Space Marines on the station that we need. And it's a very delicate political position, which the Archmagos ruins completely by deploying an artillery platform from his ship to basically threaten the Soul Drinkers. Just say, you either leave or you get destroyed. Except it's a Starfort full of ancient fighters and shuttles, and a chapter that specializes in lightning boarding actions through hostile space. So naturally, The Soul Drinkers decide we're not having this. Sarpedon decides that they are going to go to this platform and they are going to destroy it and then leave and just show them that you don't do this to the Soul Drinkers. Their honor has been like impugned. They're not having it. So
lost their commander. They're not in a good mood. You have their spear. You're trying to play games with them. Not the time, Admech. Not the time.
Yeah. So they do exactly what they were intending to, which was take the artillery platform and then use the gun to fire into the Imperium fleet to cover their escape. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, that's a lot of firing on friendly forces. Even if the other forces aren't being that friendly, that's quite a lot of...
I was going to say, once they boarded the Admech platform, I was like, this is where they go renegade, huh? Like, this is how they become a not loyalist chapter anymore, isn't it?
It's worth pointing out that there's not even a lot of them. This is 2 strike cruisers worth of Space Marines. So they're not even representing the majority of the chapter. They go rogue. They go properly rogue out of frustration, out of anger, out of feeling as though they've been slighted, and they make their escape. They know where the Soul Spear is being taken. They want to go and get it back. And so they make their escape successfully, but at that point they've gone properly rogue. And so the fleet is sent after them. An Inquisitor is brought in to deal with them. Because, of course, who wouldn't do that? So the Inquisitor shows up. They are trying to hide out an asteroid field. Inquisitor Zorus shows up and sends a guy in, an interrogator, to talk to Sarpedon and say, hey, if you surrender now, we will take you into custody. And this will be done, but you will be dealt with. If you don't do as we say, you are Excommunicate Traitoris. You're done. You're gone. So Sarpedon naturally offers to duel the interrogator and kills him because what else would you do?
As you do.
Wait, offers to duel him. Did the interrogator say yes?
Yeah.
Is he insane?
The interrogator agreed to duel a Soul Drinker, a Stardy Space Marine commander?
It's not even an Inquisitor, it's an interrogator. He's like below.
This is the thing. Not just a Space Marine, a librarian. So not just a standard Space Marine, a Psyker. Sarpedon was a librarian, and then he became a librarian captain effectively. So not just an officer, but also a librarian at the same time. So
was the interrogator just really dumb?
Now, this is where I think maybe the age of the books has got something to do with it, where it's a kind of the Soul Drinkers have got a thing set up whereby they do honor duels. Honor duels are just a part of their kind of warrior culture. So if there is a disagreement between figures of authority, they will literally have a duel on the basis that the Emperor and Dawn will give the person who is right the strength to overcome. So Sarpedon is like, okay, we duel, and if I lose, there we go. Clearly we were in the wrong. And so they duel. To be fair, the interrogator does pretty well. He's got an insane sword that's bigger than him, but it's fitted with little grav repulsors. So it's a huge sword that he can just swing as though it weighed nothing, but it required a very specific moveset that Sarpedon kind of learned, and then punched his force staff through the guy's neck and severed his spine. So, by that point, it's not just a case of, okay, you've attacked the Admech. They did steal your thing, but you've attacked the Admech. You then fired on an Imperial fleet. You then ran away, and then when an Inquisitor showed up, you killed the negotiator.
Yeah.
At this point, you can kind of forgive Lord Inquisitor Zorus for saying, you are now traitors. You are excommunicated. That's it. We're going to kill all of you, including the rest of the chapter, even though they weren't there, because at this point, it's well beyond kind of acceptable being upset about stuff.
Yeah.
I will say I'm curious about the book because I'm assuming this all occurs in the book. I'm curious if there was like in the book like a reasoning, like maybe you got the perspective of the interrogator and he was like, crap, like I gotta say yes, like this isn't good, but like I gotta do it because of X, Y, and Z instead of just him being like, nah, I'd win.
You don't really get that much. I don't think you really get much from his perspective, from what I remember. Like I read through it like last week, the first omnibus, and it was like there's a lot of characterization for.
You were saying the whole omnibus? I thought you. I the whole thing.
He tried to reel the whole.
Yeah, I tried to blast through the whole thing, which was not. Well, I wouldn't recommend that.
I heard try. I wasn't sure if you succeeded.
Yeah,
this is the thing. I got through them all. I'm just not sure how
much
like
of it stuck.
Yeah, I feel like I've done the thing where you oversaturate on something and you start to lose bits as you keep going. It's like when you binge a new series and you just go through the whole thing in one day and then you have to watch it again after at a slower
pace. What happened in the first episode? Because I just consumed like 80 hours of content in like one sitting, and it's like, don't remember how this started at all.
Yeah, that sort of vibe. But he doesn't. I mean, the interrogator doesn't actually get that much like characterization. It's very much this person arrives. You can tell they're important because they were sent by a Lord Inquisitor, and he's got a badass like archaeotech weapon that's clearly is worth more than he is. And he doesn't just like, it's not like he goes up against Sarpedon and it's just a done deal. It's quite close. He really messes Sarpedon up quite badly, considering it is a guy with a sword versus a librarian space marine. So he's got skills.
I just thought of something too. You said this was in 2002?
Yeah, the first book was like 2002.
Yeah, so I remember that because the early 2000s is also when Gaunt's Ghost was written. And I think back then, the concept of a space marine was just a heavily armored, crazier human. Because in like Gaunt's Ghost, they would, in the first book,
they killed a Chaos Space Marine.
Yeah, they opened up like an elevator and then like 7 guardsmen died to an Iron Warrior, but then they turned on like turbo mode on their las guns and shot him to death. Yeah. And like, nowadays that Space Marine would just like wipe away a city, right?
The power scaling was very different back then for like writers. And I guess that's kind of what we always talk about, right? Is like depending on who the author is, the power and the prestige of a Space Marine, like it's like a roller coaster. Sometimes it's crazy high. Sometimes it's like, oh, yeah, he's just a heavily armored infantry guy. So, yeah.
I think it's also time frame. Like we read the Night Lord books, and they're definitely the newer scale in those books.
Definitely.
Whereas, like an Eisenhorn, like he kills an emperor's children at the first book. Granted, he was distracted, and there's a lot of things like that. But because it's James Bond, the emperor's children guy was basically just odd job. Right, he was just like he was the muscle. That was basically his whole point. So I guess that makes sense.
So the first book was November 2002. So it's there was still quite a bit of like Black Library stuff, but I feel like everything has become more cohesive as time's gone on, and it's like the overall presentation of Space Marines has definitely become a lot more like uniform. The more books have come out, and like especially the more recent stuff, it's more consistent than it maybe was literally over 20 years ago, which is horrific. And I don't thinking about that. Because I read it when it came out, which is why I was like, man, this is very familiar, but it's just not familiar enough. When did this? Oh no. No.
Yeah.
So they are in a really bad situation at this point, the Soul Drinkers. But it's okay because the rest of the fleet, the rest of the chapter shows up and rescues them. And when I say rescues them, I mean basically takes them prisoner and asks politely, what is wrong with you? What do you think you're doing? The chapter master of the Soul Drinkers, Gorgolian, amazing name.
Nice.
He obviously is not a fan of what's happened. And throughout all of this, there has been like an interesting undercurrent, right? Which I've deliberately saved for now because it kind of recontextualizes a lot of like what they've done so far. Okay. On the Starfort, there is a regular human dude, a guy called Yisser. I'm going to again put his name in. However you would like to pronounce that, be my guest.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
He's a
Yes,
human. It's
sir.
like, do your thing, yes, sir. We will
Yes,
call you yes,
sir.
sir.
So he was also on the Starfort with a bunch of prisoners. He himself was a prisoner, but he started to feel the light of the Emperor and started to gather a flock around him. He started to realize that the Emperor does protect, after all. The interesting thing is the way that he thinks about the Emperor, because he uses the term the Architect of Fate.
Oh.
And he uses that term quite a lot.
Oh.
And
Okay.
he starts to become quite sort of buddy-buddy with the Soul Drinkers, because they do get him off the Starfort too. And he starts to get a bit of a flock of Space Marines himself. And they start to feel the light of the Emperor. They start to feel as though the Emperor is, beaming down on them and giving them the strength and the ability to persecute what they believe is the correct course of action, right up to the point where Sarpedon also feels the light of the Emperor and feels that the Architect of Fate is condoning, endorsing their actions, to the point where when it comes to deciding what to do with this section of Marines, like a good 250 or so Marines, they lost a few on the battle for the artillery platform, but there's still a good number of them. He duels Gorgolian to see who's right. It's Librarian Sarpedon versus Chapter Master Gorgolian for basically the heart and soul of the Soul Drinkers.
Okay, well,
And-
that's a bit of a fairer fight, thank God.
Yeah,
That is more fair. And Gorgolian does very well. He does pretty good. Until Sarpedon mutates 8 arachnid legs out of his waist and then rips him in half. At which point he loses.
I thought something like that might happen. I was waiting for like the big drop of when someone mutated as they're worshiping the Architect of Fate and they feel the light of the Emperor. It was like, it's only a matter of time before someone mutates into something insane and someone grows a tentacle or 2 or 8. So yeah.
That's a baller conversion mini.
Yeah,
though.
that's incredible.
Whoa, that's so cool.
That's
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That just the matter of factness of how you said that gets me.
Well, it's 40K, right? How else do you say it? That's just another walk in the park for 40K. No big deal. Just Architect of Fate.
I think he's walking on the ceiling at this point, but yeah.
There are literal points where he does walk on the ceiling from that point on. It's like,
Does he really?
Spider legs. It's great.
So wait. So let me get this straight though. Now the chapter master of the Soul Drinkers is now a Tzeentch. Is he Tzeentch worshipping, or is he just Tzeentch mutated, or both?
Well,
He
this
doesn't
is the thing.
realize
He
he's
doesn't
doing it?
know. He
He
doesn't know
doesn't
he's
know.
worshiping Tzeentch. He thinks he's worshiping the Emperor, Architect of Fate. Glory be his name, right?
Beloved by all.
Oh, below
Yep.
Isle, sorry.
Yeah, he thinks it's the Emperor's gift, and a lot of the chapter agree with him. Weirdly, a lot of the chapter see this and go, he is blessed by the Emperor. There is it's not like 100% conversion rate, obviously. There is literally a chapter war where quite a lot of them don't agree, but most of them do. Most of them actually go along with it, and they are, from that point on, they are followers of Sarpedon. And at this stage, because of all the stuff the Imperium put them through, they have convinced themselves that the Emperor is righteous, you should do the Emperor's work, but the Imperium is corrupt, and the Imperium does not serve its citizens well, because the way they were treated was terrible, and the Emperor has gifted them with these mutations, and it's not just Sarpedon. One of the guys who gets injured taking the artillery platform loses both his hands, which is bad, and it's like, you're never going to fight again. He gets round this by ramming like ventilation shaft, like fan blades into his stumps and sharpening them.
Oh.
Because he can't take prosthetics because he regenerates too quickly. So he's mutating. He gets to the point where bullets pass clean through him and he just regenerates instantly. There's one of the other guys, he ends up with a bunch of eyes, so he's got ridiculous like field of vision. Someone has a mutated hand so that they can wield their power axe with like 2 fingers, and they've just got like a super like a super buff hand. That's one of the weirder mutations. I'm still not convinced on that one, but they all kind of fall into this thing of the Emperor has blessed us, the Imperium is corrupt. We might be mutants, but we're mutants because the Emperor has given us these gifts.
So this sounds a lot like I was about to say, Shy. I have that buff, but for entirely different reasons. Sounds very much like kind of what Huron thought, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, the Imperium is stupid, but the Emperor still love him. It's just God, those paper pushers and those tax dealers. There's obviously this is a whole different level, but it's kind of the same idea where it's like, hey, we love the Emperor, but everything besides the Emperor is just corrupt nonsense.
Yeah, it's pretty much that. They are like fully convinced that they are still doing his work, just not the Imperium's work. But of course, the Imperium doesn't like that because they don't like the idea of Renegade Space Marine chapters running around doing whatever they like, especially when the person leading them has got 8 spider legs instead of normal legs.
The whole chapter is mutating horribly into Tzeentchian demons. Yeah,
I'm not saying that the Inquisition is right, because they're very often not. But I won't lie, I'm not 100% on brand on like. I don't feel the spider legs, you know. Like I think at some point we may have gone too far.
maybe
just the tiniest bit.
There's definite like
Smidge.
warning signs when you've just sprouted spider legs whilst fighting your own chapter master. I think there's warning signs there, but hey,
wait,
Sarpedon did not agree.
It was the librarian who sprouted the legs.
Yeah,
yes,
Sarpedon's the librarian.
Right. That
chapter
makes doubly sense, because a psyker sprouting the legs is a lot more. Yeah, got it.
Yep.
Could almost argue like extra bad, but that's not the way they saw it. They were all on board. Well, a lot of them were on board. All on board is not correct, because otherwise there wouldn't have been an entire chapter war where they had to kill a bunch of their own brothers. But at this point, they are fully renegade. They are not part of the Imperium. They are being actively hunted. They have to scuttle their own fleet to avoid detection. They take up residence on a space hulk, and part of that hulk has got a ship in it with coordinates to a specific planet, which they decide we're going to go there because the coordinates were being like hidden, or at least trying to be discovered by a chaotic presence, which they kill. So they go to this place. They go to a planet. It's ruled over by a Nurgle demon prince.
Oh.
They land on the planet and take out the Nurgle demon prince, which, that's pretty good.
That's pretty, that's as the kids say,
impressive.
That's pretty poggers. Yeah, sure.
They also...
The kids do say that, just so we're aware.
I've heard the kids say it.
It's true, they do.
Good on them.
They kill this Nurgle demon prince, and at this point, there's something of a plot twist for them. They realize that actually it's not the Emperor giving the mutations after all, funnily enough, because a Tzeentch demon prince called Abraxas shows up, gives them the soul spear, and goes, "Would you like to serve as my retinue of Chaos Space Marines?" Because it turns out it was Tzeentch all along, which obviously,
Yeah.
and anyone reading is like, this is clearly not the Emperor, and they keep talking about the Architect of Fate, but awesome. And this is where they become a little bit different from a lot of the sort of downfall of different chapters, because Sarpedon considers his options. He looks at sort of what Abraxas is offering. He takes the Soul Spear and murders him with it.
Nice.
And says, no, we're not doing Chaos. We're not doing Imperium. We serve the Emperor. Both sides can go to hell, which I think that's quite the move. That's a strong move.
I was waiting for because as soon as you're like, oh yeah, by the way, Sarpedon sprouted legs and essentially became a mutated Chaos Space Marine, I was like, okay, you told us that they go Renegade and then they go Loyalist again. What the hell? How is this mutated band of Space Marine soul drinkers going to go Loyalist again? There is no way that all these mutated boys are going to be let back in. Something big must be coming up, and well, it kind of, okay.
There is a very significant event for the Soul Drinkers that kind of leads them back to then being refounded as a Primaris chapter. There's a lot of stuff to kind of like, there's a lot of stuff in the books, but that's like their downfall. That's how they end up as renegades, as they end up being not a part of the Imperium, not part of Chaos, just their own like little personal army, mutated, obviously, not doing great, suffering from attrition quite badly because, you know, how do you get new aspirants? How do you get new recruits into the chapter? Those are all things that are like, they do find ways to do this.
Yeah.
They do.
They're in a big gray area. Yeah.
Yeah, they do manage to find recruits, but they make a slight miscalculation because they recruit from other people who are not loyal to the Imperium, who don't feel that the Imperium does a good job. So you end up with a second chapter war. There's like an entire second chapter war because some of the new recruits decide, well, we don't want to be beholden to the Emperor either. We actually do want to be Chaos because the whole thing is terrible. And we want to go over to, like, I was going to say the bad side, the side that Sarpedon said no to. So there's like an entire second chapter war dealing with that. They also have issues where individual Soul Drinkers, like their mutations lend themselves too well to certain things. So the guy who was ramming stuff into the stumps of his hands and could like just heal any wound, basically, that was a Marine called Telos. And Telos was like loyal to the Soul Drinkers. He wasn't functionally part of any squad because he didn't really pay attention to orders, because he got to the point where the only thing he really lived for was the fury of combat, which probably sounds familiar. He didn't really enjoy anything outside of murdering. So
he wouldn't want to go back. He wouldn't want to give up his gifts. He is going to go full Tzeentch, isn't he?
Oh, he went full Khorne. He went hardcore Khorne.
Obviously, yeah, Jesus. Sorry.
There was a point where they basically got stranded on a planet and some of the Soul Drinkers got out, others didn't. Telos was one of the ones that didn't, and he just ended up fully falling to Khorne and going absolutely berserk, to the point where the only way that he was taken out in the end was he was on the planet when Exterminatus happened. So he either got out somehow or that dealt with him. But they had to go back and actually do something about Telos because of just how lost he was. And they had issues with like rampant mutation where it was starting to affect Sarpedon's abilities as a librarian. So they had an apothecary that had to research how to try and stop mutations in the gene seed. They had a bad time, a real bad time, where at one point they went down to like, I think it was 200 Soul Drinkers left total.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point at which their redemption suddenly happens. So they have all these ups and downs, all these trials and tribulations as a renegade chapter, not beholden to Chaos, not beholden to the Imperium, kind of surviving on whatever they could get their hands on, until, thanks to a slight issue with Necrons, which they showed up to help with. The Soul Drinkers helped with a war against the Necrons, and they offered to help some Adeptus Mechanicus deal with Necrons. They got captured. Now, up to this point, there's been an additional issue for the Soul Drinkers, kind of running through a lot of it, which is they have a chaplain. I think it's the only chaplain left at the end, called Ictinos.
That chaplain's been struggling. He's been working overtime.
He's been fully like he's been putting in the hours like you would not believe. Additionally, because every time a squad leader was lost, Marines would just turn to the chaplain and be like, "We want to follow you. Like, you are the heart and soul of the chapter. You're keeping us going. This is all garbage and terrible, but you know the chaplain is there to keep them fighting." And so he ends up with his own little flock of Marines around him. And that turns out to be a very, very severe issue for the Soul Drinkers, as if they hadn't had enough of those, because when it comes to fighting the Necrons, They forge an alliance with the Mechanicus. The Mechanicus kind of overlook the fact that the Soul Drinkers are both renegades and filthy mutants, and they fight alongside. It's the only way to get into this tomb world and kill a Necron Lord before everything goes bad. So they kind of do this alliance as a last-ditch attempt.
I am a little shocked that the Mechanicus are just like, oh yeah, of course, Soul Drinkers, sure. You tried to absolutely destroy us before, and your heretical nonsense, but yeah, sure, whatever. Like, yeah, that is a weird alliance, isn't it?
It's a weird alliance. There's also the fact that when the Soul Drinkers went to leave the planet on the transports that the Admech promised, what they actually found were Imperial Fist Thunderhawks and a bunch of Imperial Fists, including Terminators and First Captain Lysander. So it's at this point, things are looking rough. You've got your 8-legged chapter master librarian there, dealing with Lysander face to face, and given that they are, ostensibly they are Imperial Fist successors, and they've been going through all sorts of like hell and high water and openly anti-Imperium this whole time. They are captured. They are just taken by the Imperial Fists.
Yeah, I imagine so.
As is tradition, can you guess what Sarpedon does as a response to this?
One thing, Captain Lysander was in a book I read called Mandarax. It's very similar.
Yeah.
The dude kind of bangs. I think he had to make like a deal with a demon because he was trapped in like a demon world or something. Or some weird crap like that, and then he came back and they asked him a bunch of questions, and he was like, "Yeah, nah, I'm loyal as shit." The dude is also built like a brick shit house, so
he is.
He's not the guy. Even if you've got 8 legs, he's really not the guy that you would recommend to tussle with.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because Sarpedon offered him out for a duel. Obviously.
Oh no.
That's how they deal
work.
with problems.
That's true. Yep.
If there's an issue, you deal with a duel. And Sarpedon is like, if I get beaten here, then surrender. Because clearly the Emperor's favor is no longer with us. And, don't pick off my spider legs after I die. That's mean. So he fights Lysander. Lysander beats him, obviously.
Yep.
Because Sarpedon, despite being a mutant and like having way more strength than a Space Marine should have, like in the books, a couple of times it's pointed out that he should not be as strong as he is, even for a Space Marine. He also like was fighting a Necron Lord earlier, and it wasn't going that well for him. It was only a Tech Marine sacrificing himself that meant Sarpedon survived that fight. So Lysander beats him.
Yeah.
And quickly and quite easily as well.
I was going to say it probably didn't, like, Lysander probably didn't have too much trouble, did he? Like, he kind of just bopped him on the head with that hammer and just,
I'm going to need you to sit down. Thank you very much. Right,
rolled
now
up
come with me.
newspaper, bash.
Yeah, knock it off.
Yeah, right.
I mean, his hammer is literally called like the Fist of Dorn, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it looks like it has that fist regalia, like attaching the horn to it. So or the hammer to it. Yeah.
Rest in peace. His old model is pretty bad looking.
Oh yeah, it is. But that hammer looks so sick.
That was great. Yeah.
It's the Warhammer.
John Warhammer of Warhammer 40,000. All right. Anyway, what happens then, Kirioth?
So this is where we get to the redemption section. This is where they finally end up being at the point where, when it comes to doing the Primaris stuff, the chapter's refounded. Because, and I don't know, I'm still processing this, right? Because this is something that I hadn't actually...
Really, really quick. Does Lysander straight up kill Sarpedon, or is Sarpedon just incapacitated? He straight up kills him, right? Oh, okay, cool.
He just incapacitates him. He's got to face trial for his sins and for bringing shame on the Imperial Fists and so on.
Because it's Lysander. He's a mutant. I was like, I could see him just straight up killing Sarpedon. But okay, sorry.
Yeah, I have to admit, I feel like if it was written now, then maybe he would have done. But yeah. So this was all fresh information for me, by the way, because whilst I'd read the omnibus, the omnibus is, I'd never read the last book. So this was all new to me. And it's batshit, to be totally honest. It's really out there. So the remaining soul drinkers are brought to the phalanx, and they are going to stand trial in front of the Imperial Fist and successor chapters. There's so many people here just to make sure that the fair thing is done and they're given a proper trial before they're probably executed for being traitorous mutants. So there's a vested interest there for the Imperial Fist to make sure that they get this right. They want to be seen as being fair.
Yeah.
The trial is where it gets weird, because the Soul Drinkers have not had dreadnoughts for a long time. But it turns out they do have one. Do you remember, quite a while ago now, I mentioned the guy whose name we couldn't pronounce, Daniathos.
Oh, yeah.
The one who wrote the Catechisms Martial, which is the book that all of the Soul Drinkers approaches to combat and philosophy, all of that stuff was in that book. It turns out that even though he has been dead for a long time, he's actually not dead. He is the last Soul Drinker's dreadnought.
Okay. Is there a specific reason he's the only one? Do they just not get dreadnought tech in the Soul Drinkers or something, or does it matter?
I don't know that that's ever fully explained. They just don't seem to have any dreadnoughts.
Well, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not real. It doesn't really matter. Who cares? Whatever.
Yeah, Sarpedon was pretty shocked because the last Soul Drinkers dreadnought was gone, hundreds of years ago. So the fact that there's still one left, and it's their most venerated warrior, quite a shock.
Yeah.
This is where it gets properly mad. And I'm still processing this myself. Just to throw that out there.
Okay. Wow. All right. This must get a little okay. You're hyping this up.
Not only is their warrior, philosopher, scholar, spiritual liege still there, but in dreadnought form.
Mm-hmm.
It was all part of the plan. Because
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
what?
I know. It was
all right.
Daniathos.
Just keep going.
Daniathos, when writing the Catechisms Martial, had effectively laid the foundations and seeded a cult that would produce a chapter that rebelled against the Imperium. And the chaplain, the one surviving chaplain, the one who had been keeping the chapter together, was actually following the Catechisms Martial and was using it as a way to radicalize the Soul Drinkers that were coming to him for advice and for spiritual nutrition during these awful times for the Soul Drinkers, and with all their brothers dying and their squad leaders dying, and the chaplain was there, but he was actually seeding this cult amongst the Soul Drinkers. And the dreadnought, Daniathos, wanted to be on the phalanx. He was brought to the phalanx because they discovered where he was, which was, funnily enough, on the Necron Tomb world that they were just fighting over. And he opened a warp gate within the phalanx to release Abraxas, the demon prince that Sarpedon had killed earlier.
What? Why would he do that?
Explain.
They'd been working together this whole time.
I'm sorry.
It was Tzeentch. It was Tzeentch plans within plans. It was Daniathos had laid the foundations for the chapter to go rogue and to go against the Imperium, because it was all about chaos, baby, and the Imperium needed to fall, and Abraxas had been sort of working with him, kind of, and there's a warp gate on the phalanx, and
okay. So this is the climax of the novel and everything. It's it was all Tzeentch's plan. Open the gates, go chaos, and then I assume they have to try to stop him.
Oh, wait,
yeah.
So you're telling me all of this Tzeentch stuff from Sarpedon and all of his stuff and them falling, this is all just an elaborate scheme so that they could open a warp portal on the Phalanx?
Yes, because they wanted to use the Phalanx as a mobile base
for chaos.
For chaos.
Which
Even
makes sense because
though-
the Phalanx is like insane.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Basically like a
I
planet in its own right in
understand
it, basically.
that the Phalanx is worth it, but like Chaos does understand that the Phalanx has like some of the craziest Space Marines on it and a lot of them on it, and it is not just going to fall even if you open up a portal in the middle of it.
Well,
It's-
depends on how big the portal is.
And how
I
many
guess that's
demons
true.
you get through.
True.
Yeah. You in a sense, until the portal is closed, you do have infinite demons.
I guess that's true.
Yep.
It's not going to be easy, but yeah, I guess you're right. It is like once you open the portal, it is infinite infantry, basically. That's true.
Yeah. Well,
So-
okay, so that part's fine. At first, when you started saying that, I thought you were like, this was all his plan to prove their loyalty.
Yeah!
Oh, no.
I was like,
Yeah, I
what
thought it
do
was
you
gonna be like-
mean?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like, oh
See
yeah,
how
this is
loyal
how
they
the
are?
soil drinkers,
Yeah.
the soil drinkers, the soul drinkers. Sorry,
Oh, no.
Yeah, they were farmers for a while.
those agro worlds aren't going to farm themselves, dude. But yeah, I thought it was going to be like, oh yeah, it was all just a ruse to show them all, and oh, we're the best sons of Dorne because look at all we've been through, and we're still loyal. And look, I've got Abraxas on a leash, and I just killed him again. And so good to know that wasn't the route that they went. Actually,
It's still kind of silly, but it's not that silly.
yeah,
It's
Okay.
certainly silly. I agree with that one, but
very silly.
okay.
Yeah,
So this literally sounds like the climax.
Yes. So effectively, they're given the choice again. It's like join me or die, etc., etc. The chaplain Ictanos, he joins the demons because this has been part of his thing the whole time. He's just been subverting the soul drinkers throughout the entirety of the books. Basically, you just don't really get to see
Realize
that
it
all that
until the
much.
end. Yeah.
But Sarpedon and a couple of his like chosen. Like the chosen few, there's Sarpedon, Luco, and Gravis are like those two are like they're very prominent kind of characters. They're very loyal to Sarpedon, and they're like loyal from day one. They stay there through thick and thin, kind of thing. They fight back. Sarpedon uses the Soul Spear to carve Deniathos out of his dreadnought, and then the three of them drag him through the warp portal before it's destroyed. Into the Imperium.
So cool. That's
Which
a
is
great way to use the soul
Pretty
spear.
badass. It's
kind of-
pretty cool.
It's kind of funny too because he's obviously like some decrepit because he's in a dreadnought, so he's
Yeah.
all mush.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
but it's just like you want to make a deal with chaos. Okay, I will take you directly
go.
to them. Let's go.
You know what? Just for that scene, I am now fully on board with this weird like plan within plans. Like Shai said, it's like a 5D chess thing with Zinch.
Yeah,
Like now I'm okay with it just because that scene sounds so boss.
yeah. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool end to the chapter because the Imperial Fist at that point are like, oh wow, okay, well, we brought them here because they are traitors and heretics, but they just defended the Phalanx against a demon invasion and sacrificed
literally-
themselves to save
Mhm.
everybody. So clearly they are loyal to the point where the Imperial Fists then like inscribed the Soul Drinkers like chapter history into one of the pillars on the Phalanx so that they remain remembered, which is
Oh.
how they ended up being part of one of the refounded chapters when it came to like in the age of like the Dark Imperium, when they started to create more chapters using Primaris Marines. That's why there is now Primaris Soul Drinkers, because ultimately, despite everything, at the end, they were 100% loyal to the
They
Emperor.
defended the Phalanx.
They defended
They
the Phalanx.
closed the portal. They got rid of the Dreadnought. Yep. Fair enough.
They did the
Okay.
thing, so they get to come back. The only weird bits outside of just how like whiplashy that last section
Yeah.
was
Are
when I
they
was reading through all of these.
Are the
Um,
Soul Drinkers still hella mutated?
Well, they have. This is okay. This is where it gets a bit confusing because. So we said at the start, second founding chapter, right?
Uh-huh.
They got the Soul Spear. Great. The Soul Spear is you can only activate it if you are like a son of Dawn. So either Imperial Fist or one of the Successor chapters. Except it's also stated that they are from the third founding in that same book. And this is where it starts to get a little bit funky. It gets a little bit funky because it's second founding, but also one of the characters is like, "Oh, my weapon has got a shard of Sigismund's sword in it, which was given to us when we were created in the third founding." The Soul Spear also is only like, you can't activate it if you're not a Son of Dawn, except then it's said that only Soul Drinkers can activate it. But having said that, Lysander can activate it. So
you lost Curiosity. You lost me. You've lost me, Curiosity.
We've lost the plot.
Where we're going downhill here. I'm losing it.
Yeah.
This is. I mean, to be fair, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense because it's a case of they are Sons of Dawn. They were given this thing. The thing can only be activated by the Sons of Dawn. Except then they say that only the Soul Drinkers can activate it. But then an Imperial Fist activates it. So clearly that bit, some part of it, is completely untrue. Also, they're part of the Imperial Fist Successor chapters, except one of the sanguinary priests from the Angel Sanguine, who were part of the jury on the Phalanx, examine the gene seed and go, you've got nothing to do with Rogel Dawn. Rogel Dawn is not your Primarch. However, I don't know who your Primarch is because it doesn't match any of the 18 Primarchs that we have. So they are, but they're also not. And the Soul Spear can only be activated by a Son of Dawn, except they're technically not Sons of Dawn because the gene seed doesn't match. But then that doesn't matter anyway because only they should be able to activate it. It gets very confusing. Like, it gets very weird. And it's...
It is Tzeentch. To be fair, Shai's right. This is like a bunch of Tzeentch nonsense. And I guess this is like the confusion you expect when you're dealing with... Tzeentchian plots and chaos nonsense, and they were kind of touched by Tzeentch anyway. So I guess it wouldn't be that surprising if suddenly their gene seed had like sort of this weird unknown effect to it because they've kind of sort of been tainted a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit. It kind of. I couldn't tell whether it was a case of we're building the mythology of how unreliable this is, and like the kind of unreliable narrator thing of. No one knows what's going on. Like the Soul Drinkers don't know their own history. They're second founding. They might be third founding. They're from Dawn. They're not from Dawn. The spear can only be activated by them. Oh, it can be activated by any of them, which is true. No one really knows. But there is something that maybe it feels this could be extreme, like kind of overthinking when it comes to trying to work out what's going on, because there is an additional bit of information that I've kind of come across I basically was like, what the hell is going on with the Soul Drinkers? What have other people said about this? Because my brain hurts and it feels extremely contradictory, even by 40k standards, when it's like, we're obfuscating for, myth and mystery. There is a short story called Chamber at the End of Memory.
Ooh, cool name.
Now, this is a big spoilery thing. So note now that this has spoilery stuff kind of just for the Horus Heresy as a whole in a way, I guess, but specifically to do with the Lost Legions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we got the two missing Primarchs. It's stated in this short story that Dawn and Guilliman both know what happened to them, and that Dawn was actually in the presence of one of those Primarchs. And those Primarchs had to be dealt with for whatever reason. It doesn't really necessarily go into that, I don't think.
Yeah.
But like, it's a case of. It's a case of.
I actually think I remember this one because I'm pretty positive Dorm like mentioned that offhand to Malkador, and then Malkador went to Dorn. And he's like, Dorn,
you
shut
keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, he was making like a tiny reference, and then Malkador was like, "Hey, knock it off."
Well, what it turns out they did was Guilliman and Dawn, when the Lost Primarchs were dealt with, something had to happen to the Marines, because the Marines weren't like, those Space Marines weren't necessarily corrupted or part of the same issue or whatever. And so there's little things throughout the Horus Heresy where it's like, oh, the Ultramarines are the biggest legion And then there's like little things here and there that are like, yeah, but you know why, don't you? Because they got all of the Marines that were part of the Lost Primarchs. Like little references here and there just spotted about. And it's kind of not like fully confirmed, but it's that thing of, oh, well, Dawn and Gilliman had those Marines absorbed into their chapters, into their legions, sorry. So the Ultramarines got a bunch, the Imperial Fist got a bunch, and they had their memory of it erased because they thought that was the best thing to do.
Yeah.
And those Marines also think that they were always part of Imperial Fists and always part of Ultramarines because that's the best way to integrate them. So there is a theory that I've seen a couple of times as I was kind of going through stuff.
They're from one of the Lost Primarchs, actually.
Yeah, it could be that actually the Soul Drinkers, despite being a successor chapter of the Imperial Fists, were founded using gene seed from one of the Lost Primarchs because those Space Marines were absorbed into the Imperial Fists, which would also explain why, even though this Sanguinary Priest is like, I don't know who this gene seed belongs to, but it's not any of the 18 Primarchs that we know about.
You're still technically a son of Dorn.
You're still it still sort of fits. Plus the new founding of the Soul Drinkers, from what I can see, they have the same gene seed mutation where they have the same thing. If they eat the flesh of a creature or an enemy, they get the memories. They also get the weird like emotion thing as well, which means that flaw is like continual. It's still present, even though the chapter's been refounded. So that's that could be where a lot of the weird, messy side of that comes from.
Yeah, because when you said like their gene seed didn't match, I was like, oh, Lost Primarch, but I was like, wait a minute, aren't they supposed to be sons of don't? Yeah, but that makes sense. That totally could be. I kind of like that actually. That's kind of a cool little like theory. I like that. I like that.
Isn't there one issue with that though? Where like, was every Marine in the Soul Drinkers originally from that time frame? Did no new Marines eventually arrive? And because I'm assuming we're out of dead Primarch gene seed.
That's I think one of the things that makes it as confusing as it is, because there's loads of really weird stuff that's again kind of designed to throw you off. In the novella that talks about Danaithos, at one point, he's like, "Oh yeah, the Space Marines were made by eating the Primarch's flesh or something," and it's like that's clearly not true. We know that's not true. That's just something that some guy has said, and it's just a statement that is false but believed. So yeah, it's also things like the Soul Spear. The Soul Spear is this artifact wielded by Dawn. It doesn't really get mentioned ever. It's hugely important to them.
Yeah.
But where is it in like the Siege of Terror or whatever?
Yeah, that would be very helpful to
where is it anywhere in the Horus Heresy? It's just another thing of whatever happened with their founding, whether it was the second founding, whether it was the third founding. It's really deliberately obscured. Like the difference between the second and the third founding thing. It talks specifically about Rogal Dorn giving them the Soul Spear, etc., etc. In the same novella where it's talking about Danaithos and all his stuff. There is a quote. Gorosius weighed his Crozius Arcanum in his hand, a very old weapon. It contained a sliver of the sword once wielded by Sigismund, the Imperial Fist commander, who had become the first Black Templar, and from whose personal guard the Soul Drinkers had been created during the third founding. So there's just direct contradiction to what's stated during the omnibus, like the first omnibus, and what is brought up as common Soul Drinkers belief, and then there's that, which is totally different. So yeah, it's very like, I think deliberately confusing. I think the whole point is just no one knows. No one's got any idea what's going on with these. But
it does fit the Tzeentchian plot lines of being very confusing and twisting and turning and not knowing. Yeah. This whole thing is very Tzeentch-pilled.
It is. It's very siege Phil. It's just like, who are these people? Where'd they come from? Who knows?
Doesn't matter. Who cares?
Doesn't matter.
Where'd that cool spear go? Shut up. Yeah, it's very
I don't know, but can we have it
weirdly
back?
confusing.
No. Oh.
But at the same time, it is. I mean, I was thoroughly amused learning about the Soul Drinkers. So while confusing and weird and maybe a little, I don't know if I want to say convoluted, but it interesting, and I liked it quite a bit. Sorry to hit you with the accent.
I like the fact that they had a Spider-Man.
He's pretty cool. He's great. I like Sarpedon. To be fair, the books are good. They are good. Some like the older ones are a bit more dated. Like it's also written over quite a long time. Like it's not like it was all done in like a couple of years.
It didn't come out as an omnibus, right?
No,
it was like what, 4 or 5 books over the span of years. I assume
the first book was 2002, and then the last book outside of the novella was 2012. So there's like a decade of these things coming out every now and then the actual novella was like 2010. So yeah, the novella is a bit before the last novel.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then there is if you want more recent for them, there is Traitor by Deed, which is like the latest book for them, which that's only in 2020, which kind of deals with it effectively deals with them learning of who the Soul Drinkers were. So you've got Soul Drinkers now, all Primarisified and looking cool, kind of finding out where their name came from and like the history of their chapter. So
yeah, so there are actually a lot of Soul Drinker books. There's the 6 in the omnibus, and there are 2 novellas.
Yeah, like I said, there's like 1,000, like 2,000 odd pages on it.
Yeah, that's good. And man, you were tasked with reading all of that?
Oh, Shy didn't ask me to. I just thought it would be a way to do it, but I don't know that.
Not that you were forced to. Like, I'm not saying you had to. It's just wow, that is the task.
I wouldn't suggest it's the optimal reading experience for any series, but I still enjoyed it. Like, they're still pretty decent books.
I was gonna say, from like what you told us about the Soul Drinkers, a part of me is like, man, I kind of want to read them now. Like it's weird, it's confusing. The end is quite the twist, but like, you know, I dig the Soul Drinkers. I think that's cool.
They're a fun chapter.
Yeah,
they've got a hell of a lot of background.
Yeah,
but then you'd expect that with like a decade's worth of novels.
Sheesh.
All right. I'm curious. I do find it a little unfortunate at times, though. You get all the books, and it's like all of these old school 2000s era artworks for them, and then you've got like the newest one, which is just a purple fucking Primaris Marine, and that's it.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh man,
aged a little bit. Yeah,
a teensy tiny bit, but it's a wild group. I'm curious about how they're going to like. I don't know, the regalia and stuff is kind of interesting. They don't look very Soul Drinkery. They look very Emperor's Children more than anything.
Yeah, you know, when I saw the picture of them, I thought for sure this was going to be an episode about, I don't know, maybe like a pre-heresy Emperor's Children, or like maybe they were actually like Chaos, because like you showed the picture before we started talking about them, and I was like, God, that's so Emperor's Children coded, because the colors, and it's like an excess goblet that you like maybe drink a lot from, and yeah.
Well, next thing you know, Curiosity, you're gonna have to do Sons of the Phoenix if we're gonna have to keep going on with definitely not Emperor's Children looking people that are loyalist.
Only do chapters that are purple and gold, or white and purple, or like any combination of those. Just work our way through the long list of them.
Some mixture of things like that. Yeah, Sons of the Phoenix look cool too, but they're I swear they're not Emperor's Children. I promise. Well, I guess I'm curious about how much the Soul Drinkers had like a bit of a fandom back in the day because of the older times of the novels. But it'd be a curious thing to look at.
Yeah,
for Games Workshop, like just Black Library novels, like the sort of lore and background, having an actual full-on redemption arc for a Renegade chapter is pretty cool. I don't think it should be done all that often, but it was actually very satisfying. I think the Soul Drinkers have got a really good trajectory. It starts out bad, it gets worse, it gets a lot worse. It ends looking like it's going to be super bad, but then just at the end, you just get that little lift, just that little chef's kiss moment of, yeah, they were right all along. I like that. It's good.
Oh, before we end, I wanted to ask, Bricky and Kirioth, how often does this happen where a subchapter, a chapter gets touched by chaos, very obviously like Tzeentch, and they do something that gets them like reintegrated and allows them to still be loyalists? Is this like one of the only times, if ever?
Reintegrated a few times, I'm assuming, but like in the general course of the everything, like basically non-existent.
Basically never. Okay.
Yeah.
I would imagine it's a rarity, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it probably numbers in like the single digits, but that in the world of 40K is like nothing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
No second chances.
No. The Imperium does not much care for second chances.
Sure.
Also,
they all died and their name got reason.
Yeah, they're all spiteful assholes anyway.
Just curious.
Just Kirioth.
Yeah, every time we've said curious today, I was like, oh, hey, Kirioth. And I was like, no, not quite, almost.
I'm amazed that hasn't come up before, to be honest.
Curious
episodes with Kirioth.
Hey.
I'm doing my best.
Nicely done.
It was all right.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, so are we hitting that old country road?
Yep, I'll get back in the wall. It's nicely padded. It's fine.
Okay. We got some insulation in there for you. You're good?
I don't like insulation. I prefer to be freezing cold the whole time. Keeps you fresh.
Oh, all right. I guess we'll see you next time then. And thanks for being here. And great new merch coming soon.
This man hates air conditioning.